Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar by Phrase. Today, we are doing an introduction to Phrase TMS for linguists. My name is Clara, and I'm very happy to see so many of you joining us today. Thank you so much for the time that you are taking to have a look at how you can work as a translator, reviewer, or proofreader, or any other linguist role in the Phrase TMS. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter today. It's Giorgio Vassallo. He is our solution architect, and he will do the demonstration of the Phrase TMS for you from the perspective of a linguist.
Hello, everyone. My name is Giorgio. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm a solutions architect here at Phrase, and today I'll be giving a demo on how you can effectively use Phrase TMS to translate and review content. I'll be going over various functions of the editor view, and at the end we can hold a Q&A session in case there's anything that might be unclear about. So this is it. This is Phrase TMS, and TMS stands for Translation Management System, but we just call it TMS for short. And here's the main page before you log in. You can access it on most of the popular browsers, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, all the big ones. And so I'm going to log in as a linguist, Pepe. So I'm going to enter his username and his password. And all right, so we're in. So once you log in, you'll see this particular screen that has any and all jobs that have been assigned to you. Before we go into projects and jobs, let's go into settings first. So here's where you can change some settings that will be specific to you only. So language, which will be the language of the user interface of Phrase. So in case you prefer for it to be in another language, you can change it here. Spell checker user dictionary, in case you want to use your own dictionary or if your organization sends one to you. It's just a dictionary function that helps with typos and spellings, and this would be uploaded in Excel format. And this would be pretty useful in case that there are particular spelling conventions to your organization that need to be followed. Next is time zone, and this one's pretty important because this one defines the time zone that you're in, and Phrase uses your time zone to calculate job deadlines for you. So if I'm in the UK, for example, the listed deadline that the project manager selects will appear differently to me by a few hours compared to if I'm in the US. So when you first log in, make sure to select your time zone to make sure the deadlines are shown to you correctly. And lastly, two-factor authentication. You don't have to do this, but it's always a good idea to have an extra safety step, and you can add this on your own, as long as you have Google Authenticator, Authy, or some other compatible QR code application on your phone. So let's go to the projects page. And here's where I can see the projects that contain jobs that have been assigned to me. And I currently have quite a few assigned to me right now. So if you're working on a lot of files at once, this list here can grow a lot, just like mine did. So suppose that I only want to see projects that were created recently. So I can check this filter here and have it show me only projects that were created 24 hours ago. And here we go. Only one project fits this criteria. So for this filter I have here, I can actually save it into my view. So that way, next time that I come to this projects page, I'll only see projects that fall under this created in the last 24 hours parameter. So I can easily narrow down to the most recent ones. And that's just one filter. I can actually add filters on top of each other. So, all right, so let's click into the project. So this is a project, and here you can see all the relevant information related to what is being translated. So the name of the project, who created it, when it was created, the languages that we're translating into, the due dates, and so on. So here's the actual file for translation. Below that is the analyses section, and so this shows a breakdown of the word count and translation memory leverage, and it gives me an idea of how much work will be involved on my part for this translation task. So I see that there are 511 words. Now, you may or may not have one depending on if the project manager created one for you, so that is something that you would have to get in touch with them for. Below that is the quotes part, which has a quote that the project manager already created for me. And here I can see how much I, as the translator, can expect to earn from this job. So in this case, I already established with my project manager that I have a $15 minimum fee, and that's what kicks in here. Because without the minimum, because the word count is so low, it would fall below that. It would be $9. But so in this case, it's going to be 15. And same with an analysis, I may or may not see one here, depending on if the project manager created one. Below that, you'll find some translation assets like translation memories and term bases and reference material if they have been added. If there aren't any, you might want to reach out to your project manager to let them know in case they forgot to add them. Because if you translate something without a translation memory attached, your translations won't be saved anywhere and you won't be able to use them in the future. In some cases, a project manager might grant you access to both of these and allow you to directly edit entries in them. And for that, you'd just be able to click on them. And you can just press enter in the empty field just to show up all results, or you can actually search for words to search for specific segments, and then you can just directly edit the entries. Because I'm a linguist though, I don't have permission to import or export them out, only carrying out my changes directly here in the text boxes. So back to the project. This whole thing that we're seeing here is a project, and this particular file that we're translating is a job. So in TMS, the difference between a project and a job is that a project can contain multiple jobs. So if you're translating 5 documents, that's a project containing 5 jobs. And a job represents each individual file for translation into a specified target language. And you're only going to see the ones that are assigned to you. So maybe the project manager needs to translate this file into 7 languages, but I'm only seeing the Spanish one because that's the language that is relevant to me. You can open the file here by clicking on it, but if you'd like to just jump right in without having to come to the projects view, you can go into the jobs page where we initially were after logging in, and we can click on the job. I can't open it because I haven't accepted it. I need to accept it before I can start working on it. However, if you'd like to take a look at it before you accept it, you can click here on where it says open as read only, and it'll open the job in what we call the editor view. You won't be able to edit anything though until you actually accept it. So we can accept the job there in the editor view, but there's just one more thing that I want to show here before we open the job. So here at the top we see a few buttons. So accept, decline, and 2 that are grayed out, complete and reject. So accept is just to accept the job, same as what we can do in the editor view, and by accepting it, I'm committing to working on the translation. Decline is for when you can't do it for any reason. You have no time, you're sick, you're on vacation, or any other reason. And complete is for when you finish the work and you submit it to the project manager. And you can also do that inside the editor view. So this one's grayed out because I haven't accepted it yet. I can't complete a job that is not yet mine. And finally, reject. Reject is a little bit different though. You're also saying that you can't do the job, but you're rejecting it on the basis that the translation has problems. And it's really something that the translator should fix. So when you click reject, you're also sending the job back to the previous workflow step, and the project manager will be notified so that they can take action on it and have it fixed before reassigning it to you or someone else. Of course, this implies that there is a quality problem, so you would most likely only use this if somebody worked on this translation, on this job, at a previous workflow step before you did. So, okay, so let's accept the job. And let's open up the editor view. All right, so here is where you'll be working on the file. Before I continue here, I just want to mention that this web editor is one of the editor versions that we offer. So here I'm logged onto the site on my browser. I don't need to install it and it's purely online, but you can also download the desktop editor, which you can install onto your computer and work offline. So suppose that you're traveling and you have no internet, then you can download your assigned jobs beforehand, work on them offline, and then upload them once again once you have internet again. So the first thing you're going to see is the text of the original document at the left-hand side and the translated version at the right-hand side. So some segments might be blank, but some of them might have text in them depending on if your project manager has enabled machine translation, which has been in this case. And at the bottom is a preview pane, which shows a preview of how the text will look like in both the original and the target document. So here is the original one, shows me how the document looks. And at the right is this empty pane, which we will come back to later. At the top right, I see these small green squares that show I have a translation memory, a term base, and machine translation enabled here. So the text here is divided into segments, which not always, but most of the time correspond to sentences or short phrases. So if we want to add or edit a translation, it's just as simple as inserting the cursor and start typing. So let's make a change here because this is some gibberish that really shouldn't be here. So let's delete that. So to save your work, you have to confirm it. So to confirm it, you can either click on the X at the right, which will turn it into a green check mark, or you can use a keyboard shortcut. On a Mac, it's Command Enter, and on Windows, I believe it's Control Enter. There's loads of keyboard shortcuts to use here in Phrase TMS. So as you translate, you might notice that some words are highlighted in yellow. For this one here, like for example, this example, noodles. So that means that it's been detected as a term in a term base, which just for reference, a term base, you can think of it as a glossary. So you can click on it here at the right and you'll see any additional info that has been added to it. So I click here on the term and I see that this is the approved term, fideos. So there's a few extra information here. So noun, masculine, plural, and there's even a link here that I can reference to read more about it. You can also edit or add terms yourself if the project manager has granted you that right. So this one that is selected, I can click on either edit source and edit target, and I will be able to change it accordingly in the new page that would pop up. Otherwise, if you want to add a new term, you can highlight a separate term here, and then you can click on Tools and Add Term. And now we see here at the bottom that it's been auto-filled, and you can define more parameters. If it's a preferred term, or if the word is just incorrect, you can mark it as forbidden term and then add it. And so in the future, that way, anyone knows not to translate it like that. And so here at the right, we actually see an example of that, a forbidden term. So espaguetis, this is a forbidden term and it's even crossed out. So it's got like a red word here that says forbidden. And so for any linguist that is working on this document, they will know that this word should never be used in a translation. So, all right, let's talk about these numbers here. So these numbers at the right indicate various scores, and they tell you the translation leverage. So if you're working on this translation as either a translator, reviewer, or an editor, especially a reviewer or an editor, you might see gray check marks instead of these green ones, and that means that someone has worked on this file previously. And so this is one of the advantages of using translation memory. So there's less work for you to do now because some of this text has already been translated. So let's talk about the numbers. So if you see 100, it means that this is a 100% match. So this content is something that has been translated exactly in the past, so you see it offered here. And depending on the agreement that you have with your project manager, you might need to review them or not. For some translations, you might already see green check marks, and this is something that the project manager might set in the project settings, letting you know that you can disregard them. This one here that says 91 shows that it's very close to something that's been translated in the past. But of course, it's had some change. So if we click on it, you can actually see the difference here at the right. The red highlighted part is what's been deleted, and the green part is what's been added since the last time it was translated. Let's scroll down to segments 10 and 11. So these, you can see that they have actually not hundreds, but 101s. And so these are similar to 100s in the sense that they've been translated perfectly in the past. But the difference is that the surrounding segments have also been translated exactly as before. So these 101s are better than hundreds because not only is the translation the same, but the context around it is also the same. So that way it's even better than a 100% translation. If you've used other CAT tools, you might know them as context matches. Let's scroll up a little bit up to a previous segment here, segment 7. So we have this arrow here, this blue arrow, and this is a repetition. So what this means is that somewhere later on in this document, there is another sentence with this exact same text, and Phrase recognizes this. So when you translate it once, it'll automatically send it down to those repeated segments so that you don't have to spend your time retranslating something that you already did earlier in the document. I'm actually going to bring up another screen here real quick and talk about something, and it's something called ICU plural. So depending on the type of content that you're translating, you might have to deal with pluralization. So different languages create plurals in different ways. So in English, for example, we can say that there are 0 dogs, 1 dog, and 2 dogs, 10 dogs, and 1,000,000 dogs. But some languages do it differently. So in Russian, for example, the plural for 2 dogs would be different than 8 dogs. So this way, you would be able to enter all possible translations depending on the number of things, and of course, depending on the language that you're translating into. Phrase automatically accounts for that. So here, I'm translating a file into Spanish, and it's asking me for the translation for results, either 1 result, many results, or 0 results. But now if we go to another language like Russian, we see that their pluralization is different. So 1 results, few results between 2 and 4, and then many between 5 and 19 or others, and then others between 0 and fractional amounts. All right, so let's go back to our ramen article. So, all right, so these numbers here, the blue numbers, these numbers are tags, and tags represent non-translatable text. And what that means is that they generally stand for variables, special formatting, or sometimes even programming code. So in short, it's content that doesn't need to be translated because more often than not, it's instructions for the computer. So you'll see them represented as these small numbers in blue icons. So one thing to note is that the number of tags in the translation must match the ones in the source document. So for example, in this segment, I need to make sure that my 1 and 1 and 2 and 2 tags are also represented in my translation here. With machine translation, the tags should be added. So for example, this segment that came from machine translation, and you can see that it came from machine translation because it has a very small underline underneath it, already added the tag. But in this one, which it came from the translation memory, it actually didn't. So that's something that I need to fix. And clicking on this segment, I can actually see, for example, where it's what it's actually linking to. So for example, here, this segment, segment 3, I can see here that this actually refers to a hyperlink. And actually, I can actually expand tags. So if I click here on Edit, Tags, Expand Tags, I can see the information behind them, which is not exactly super useful to me. But at the very least, I can tell. In some other cases, I might be able to tell what is operating in the tag, depending on the file format that I'm translating. But in this case, it's gibberish for me, so I would rather just not expand the tags. By the way, earlier when I said that tags in the translation must match the ones in the source, what I mean is that the same numbers have to be present. You can, to a certain point, you can change the order of when they appear based on the grammar of the language that you're translating into, but be careful when getting too creative because they can break things. So you might be able to add, depending on the grammar, you might be able to add another word here and then add one of the tags here and then here, right around the ramen word so that it matches what's in the English. Here up top, we can filter text. So for example, you want to see segments in the English that only say shops. So we're going to see, so now it's going to show only those segments. And then let's suppose that we want to filter all the corresponding Spanish segments that have this corresponding translation, tiendas. And now they're also shown too. And now from here, we can actually bulk replace text. So let's click here. Let's say that we want to replace the word tiendas with almacenes. And if we click replace all, now all instances of tiendas have been replaced with almacenes. But I don't actually want to make that change, so I'll undo it. But that is a very powerful weapon for when you want to ensure consistency of terminology. I can also filter not only for words, but for specific statuses. So maybe I want to see segments that were translated by machine translation, or maybe segments that have been not confirmed, or maybe I want to sort the segments alphabetically from A to Z. So that is something else that I can do as well. If I want to quickly filter for a word, I don't actually have to type it. I can actually select the word, click on Tools, and Filter, and it's going to add it immediately to the filter. So I don't need to type it from scratch every single time. Another thing that we can do is splitting and joining segments. So in some cases, maybe the document might have a segmentation issue, which means that text that is together should be apart, or maybe even the opposite, text that is apart should be together. So if we go to this segment, let's say, let's take this one, segment 11. And if we click join here, it's going to combine the next one into one joint segment. Of course, it's going to affect the translation memory leverage because now it's basically new text that has been brought in. So it's up to me to confirm it now. And if we want to split it, then we can put the cursor in the place where we want to split it. And let's try, for example, let's say that there is an error here, and there should be actually two separate ones. I can insert the cursor there and split it. And now it's two separate segments. All right, so there is a little flag here, which stands for LQA, or Language Quality Assessment. And we'll come back to this shortly. And there's also a speech bubble next to it, which is where you can add comments, and we'll also come back to this shortly. If we click here on where it says cat, which is actually what is selected by default, this essentially shows you similar matches that were found in the translation memory. So you can reference them if needed. And this is also where you would find the term-based matches where they would be, for example, highlighted. Here, this one has a combination of everything. The next one is the search pane. So this one allows you to search for specific text inside the entire translation memory. And here you can define in which direction it should look for. So if you're looking for an English word, then by default, it'll be the first option, so EN into Spanish, so I can search for words in English. But if I want to search for Spanish, then I can select the second option, and then it will search for Spanish strings. The next one is the QA tab. So here you can run a quality assurance step. And this step, what it does is it detects errors in translation by comparing source and target segments and checking, for example, the term base, spelling, etc. And it helps you as a translator detect errors and improve overall translation quality and consistency. So for example, if a character limitation has been set by the project manager, you would see it here. So let's run the QA. And there's quite a few issues here. So for example, I see in segment 3, there's a forbidden term. Remember that espaguetis is my forbidden term, so that's something that I have to fix. There's also a few spelling issues. So for example, here, that's a spelling mistake. Another spelling. And of course, the majority of the issues that were found by the QA are segments that haven't been confirmed yet, so that is something to, so it's basically it telling me, hey, please confirm these segments because they haven't been reviewed yet. There's some cases though where you might want to ignore the QA results. So let's go to segment, here we go, segment 21. So for example, here, it's telling us in segment 21 that it's missing terms. So remember that in term base, we established that the correct term for noodles is fideos, but it hasn't been found here. Oodles or noodles was left as Oodles of Noodles. But this is actually okay. Oodles of Noodles is actually a brand name, so it's fine that it stays like this. It's a false positive. So in this case, we can check this box here at the right and mark it as ignored. Still, do be careful when ignoring issues, because this is you essentially saying that you're okay with the segment as is, and it's still your responsibility as a linguist to make sure that everything is okay. In some cases, the project manager might have set up the project so that there are specific QA issues that you cannot ignore and need to fix. For example, character limitations. If you overcome the maximum character limit, it might not allow you to submit the file to them. So that is something that you would definitely need to fix. But if that's the case, or if maybe you run into an issue that is that you cannot ignore, but you should be able to, or there is just no way around it, then you'll have to contact your project manager and let them know. The next one is changes. So this one shows changes that have been carried out as the translation moves across each step of the workflow. So if there were changes, I would see them here in the same place where I also see the TM changes. And they would be highlighted in red or green depending on what was removed or added. But in this case, because Pepe is the only one working on this, then no changes are shown here. But it's a good way to see how the translation was changed in between the workflow steps, and I can also see what translator changed what segments and how they changed them. The next one is more. So this one shows how linguists have translated segments for other languages. So suppose, for example, that you're translating this document into Spanish for Mexico, and there are other translators working into this same document for Spanish for Colombia, Spain, Argentina. Well, in that case, it would be very useful to see what those other linguists have been doing so you can riff off of their work. But even in this case, when I click on Show Matches, wait, let me select the segment, Show Matches. What I'm seeing here is very different languages that on the surface might not be super helpful to me, but actually it still is, because I can catch a few glimpses of what they're doing. So if maybe they're translating names or brands or addresses, then I can follow their lead as well. The next one is comments. So suppose that you're working on, I want to point out to everyone involved in this translation. So this is how you would do so. You can either click on the speech bubble or click here on comments. And at the bottom right, you'll see the segment that you've selected and this empty field where you can add a comment. So let's say, for example, check spelling, please. And we can click on comment. And now it has been recorded. So now anyone who's involved in this project, as a translator who'll be working after you, or a reviewer, project manager, or admin, will be able to see this comment. And you can also reply to existing comments. So I'll say, for example, spelling fixed, and click reply. And now I want to mark this comment as resolved. So for whoever looks at this translation in the future, they'll know that there was an issue, but it was fixed, and they can disregard it. So you can mark it as resolved by clicking on the circle here, and now it'll have a little green check mark, and here on the segment level, it'll have a little check mark inside the speech bubble. Something you can actually do is you can accept the job, and if you see that the translation maybe is not up to par, you can add comments pointing out the issues and then reject the job so that when the translators go back to it, they'll know exactly where they can start fixing issues. A feature that we released recently is the ability to tag other people. So you can at a user. So say, for example, I want to flag something to the project manager, so I can say at Giorgio. Is this correct? Source seems unclear, and click on comment. And so Giorgio will get a notification letting him know that there is a comment addressing him. But, okay, what if you see an issue that happens multiple times? Does that mean I'm going to have to actually click on every comment and say, check spelling, check spelling, check spelling, check spelling? No, of course not. So something that you can do is bulk commenting. So if you want to add multiple comments, add comments to multiple segments, what you can do is select multiple segments, click on one segment here, and then at least on the Mac, if I hold down Command, it will hold my selection of other segments. And then I can add, here we can see the multiple segments have been selected. So I can say, for example, check style guide and click on comment. And so now the comment has been recorded. And if I also want to do, for example, a range of comments, if I hold down Shift instead of Command, it'll select everything within that range. So from 16 to 20, and then another comment. Check source, please. Comment. So one thing to note, when you add bulk comments like this, it creates a parent and child relationship. So basically, the first comment in that range will be the parent. And so any changes to the parent comment, except replies, will also propagate to the children. So if you mark the parent as resolved, the children will also be resolved too. Or even if you delete the parent, then they'll also be deleted too. However, if you make any changes to a child comment, that will sever the relationship. So later on, if you make any changes later on to the parent comment, that particular child won't be affected, and you'll have to manually either mark it as resolved or reply to it or undelete it, or whatever action that it is that you made for the parent one, it won't propagate to that child. The last one is LQA. So LQA, or Language Quality Assessment, is essentially a mechanism used to arrive at quality scores based on counts of error. And unlike the previous QA checks I showed earlier, this is carried out by a human. So think of it as when you take an exam in school. There's a minimum acceptable percentage that you must reach in order to pass. So as you review the document, let's start the assessment. You can assign a severity value to each error or issue that you find. So let's say, for example, this one here. So, oh no, this is terrible. So error category, it's there's an accuracy problem. And you can also select the subcategory to be more specific. So it's inaccurate, okay, but inaccurate how? So maybe the translator just mistranslated something, or they omitted something important, or maybe they overtranslated it. There's a few categories here. So let's go with mistranslation. And so here I can select the severity. So is it neutral? Like, it's kind of preferential, stylistic. It's, not a really big deal, but still something that should be marked out. Then I can just mark it as neutral. But otherwise, I can also mark it if it's minor, major, or critical, like an actual really big deal that is massively affecting the ideas that are being transferred to conveyed in the translation. Then I would definitely mark it as critical, and can optionally mark it if it's a repeated issue, but repeated issues won't be counted towards the final score. So I can, optionally mark them here, but otherwise, please be more careful with these. I would, XYZ, flag issue. And there it is. So once you finish, you can click here on, finish, and that will generate a score that then the project manager can send it to whoever worked on this before you. And so they can start, they can basically, see the report and see exactly where it was that they went wrong and how they can improve their translations in the future. So it would look something like, I think I have one open here. Yeah, so it would look something like this. So for example, this is one that Pepe translated for me back in February, and I reviewed it. So, and this one, he actually did a little better. So the pass threshold was 90, and again, this is something that can be customized. Maybe if you're a your project manager might want to set up a higher threshold if they want to be a little more strict for certain content types, or maybe a little more relaxed depending, again, on content types or for a specific translator. So they can set the pass threshold for, higher, 99, 95, 80, 50, whatever. And so here below that, we can see a breakdown of, essentially a report card. We can see a breakdown of the errors. So for example, there was one neutral accuracy issue. There was one minor improper exact TM match, one major fluency issue, and so on. And so here below, there's detailed information as to the mistakes that Pepe made. So for example, here's the file name that he translated, the segment number that was, affected, so to speak, the source text, the Pepe's original translation, the reviewer's revised translation, the error category, so fluency, accuracy, terminology accuracy, subcategory if one was applied, severity if it was a repeated issue, and if there were any comments. So this is a good tool for linguists to eventually see exactly where their translations are lacking and how they can improve. So LQA another thing, LQA can sometimes some linguists some customers like to use it just as purely as a grading rubric, but some of them also like to include changes too. So for example, as I showed in the report card, there is an option to also provide a revised translation. So if I want to, or if that's part of your organization's processes, then I can also fix the translation here so that the translator can see exactly the correction. But otherwise, you could maybe just grant them the final result without changing the translation. And of course, LQA can be its own step, so you may or may not have it accessible all the time, depending on the workflow that the project manager selected when creating the project. Pretty much everything I showed you here can be done through a keyboard shortcut, and you can find those here in the drop-down menu. So in the edit drop-down, so for example, splitting and joining segments, moving to first segment, tools, adding terms, running QA, everything, formatting, bold, italic, underline, that's something that you can do as well. And the document tab. So here, besides completing and declining a job, you can also, for example, view the original version of the source file so that you can, really get a good handle of how it looks like, even though you can see it here in the preview. But if you want to maybe view it in the original file format, whether it's, Microsoft Word or text or anything like that, then you can do that. And same thing, but you can also preview the translation, so what the resulting translation would look like, and a few options to export them, export either XLIF or in a bilingual docx file. Exporting to bilingual docx file is an option, but be careful if you want to carry out your work there, because you do lose out on a lot of the functionalities here, like term bases and searching the translation memory and the QA assessment. So it's an option, but it would probably be better to work here instead. But of course, that also depends on your organization. So, all right, so let's pretend that all of these segments are okay and clear, so I can confirm them. So I can confirm them and mark it as complete. But of course, I can't mark it as complete, so I do need to confirm everything. Whoops. Let's just add that translation there, pretend that that is proper Spanish. And now I see that all of my segments are confirmed and green and they look nice, and I'm going to click complete. So note that once you complete a job, that's final. You can't go back and edit it again. Fortunately, you'll get this little pop-up basically asking for confirmation to make sure that you really did complete it. So if by any reason you mistakenly click on this one as well and you still had more work to do, what you would have to do is let the project manager know, and so they can move the job back to the previous step so that you can go in there and finish your work. Complete. So speaking of finishing your work, you don't have to worry about saving at the end or anything like that. Phrase saves your progress as you confirm each segment, at least here in the web version. So I know earlier I mentioned the differences between the desktop and the online version. So only if you don't have internet, that's when you would have to, save your work, so to speak. So there is an option to save your work every once in a while, but then you would have to upload the final file here to TMS, and there's an option to do that within the desktop editor. Suppose that you I want to show another thing here. Suppose that you receive multiple jobs to translate. So instead of clicking each one individually and opening them up, so for example, here's this document that Pepe was working on, and actually if I refresh the page, it should change to 100. Yeah, because Pepe just finished and he passed. Anyway, so if I have multiple files open, I can actually select them and open them together. And so this way I can easily work on them. The only caveat for this is that they must be the same language. So if you're a translator that works into multiple languages, you'll have to translate them separately. But here, for example, I see ramen recipe is the first document, and then, oh, here's another one, ramen recipe as well. Yeah, so there's 2 ramen recipes that we translated. Whoops. That's really about it. If there's anything that is unclear, or if you'd like more detailed information about anything, you can go here in the editor view, and here under help, you can click on user manual, and that'll take you to our help center about the editor, and it has all the information about every single function that we just went over right here. And beyond that, so that's just to learn more information specific, right out of the help center. But you can also click the help button here at the bottom left, and you can type keywords that will display articles from the help center concerning whatever topic you're interested in, so you can read about it more. So let's say translation memory, and here we go. Top results, translation memories in TMS. So what is a translation memory, and basically how to use it, and how it works. If you ever run into a problem or a bug where you think, this is not working the way it should be working, or something is absolutely blocking me from working, something you can do is file a bug. So in this, after you click help, click on the button here that says contact us, and click on submit a request for Phrase TMS, and here you'll be able to file a bug ticket with our support team. So here you can find enter a subject. So as if I were, provides some brief intro to our support team, and a request type. So bug report if it's, something that is not working, but there's a few other things that you can also submit, like new feature requests, like, hey, it would be cool if we could do, this or that. So, if it's a bug report, then you would also assign it a severity value. So if it's P1, where it's an absolute blocker that just does not allow you to carry out your work, then it's P1. Or for example, all the way down to P4, where it's just kind of like a minor annoyance, but it still works. So, pick the correct one. And then the area. So basically, if you're going to be, if you're going to be working as a linguist, then more often than not, it might be editor. But of course, make sure to look over the area to make sure you select the correct one. And then what editor? Is it desktop one, mobile one, which we also support, and also, or the web editor. So if it's a web editor, what's not working in the web editor? So conversations, machine translation, QA, tags, anything like that. And you can just also optionally, but helpfully, provide a project or job URL to help our support team, so they can see exactly the project or job that is giving you trouble, if that's what that is. An error message. So if you're getting an error message, show it to them. And a detailed description of what's happening. And you can also add attachments. So it's always a good idea to add screenshots if possible. And then you can click send, and they'll get back to you. So, all right, I think that's it for now. Yeah, let's open up for questions.
So let's start. First question, is there a way to easily add tags from the source into the translation? I don't like that I have to copy and paste them.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a way to add them automatically. So let me share my screen. All right, yes. So let's look at the same document that we were looking before. So look at segment 3. So there are some tags here. So 1, 1, 2, and 2. So yeah, you could copy them, but as you mentioned, I mean, that's a lot of extra work that you have to do. So one thing you can do is click this button here that says insert tags, and it will automatically add them based on where they are located in the source segment. So if I just click here, it'll add the opening tag 1. And then if I put my cursor there, closing tag 1. And then the next thing again, opening tag 2. And then there's also keyboard shortcuts. So you can press, rather than having to press the button, you can press F8 on your keyboard. And there it is.
Cool. Thank you very much. Next question. Which languages are available for the user interface?
I think there's 11 languages. Let's find out. Settings, language, and here it is. Chinese simplified, Czech, English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish.
Nice. Thank you. Next question. If we don't have a translation memory or term base, can we create one on the basis of a project we have translated or reviewed in Phrase?
So that's more of a project manager question. So as a linguist, you wouldn't have the right to be able to do that. So the project manager is the one that sets, how the project is going to be translated, the languages and what kind of assets. So the long answer to this question is yes, if you're a project manager, but not if you're a linguist. The linguists are more concerned directly with the translation itself. It's the project managers that would decide what assets, or like translation memories or term bases, should be added to a particular project.
Okay, thank you. Can I ignore QA issues en masse instead of having to manually click every single QA issue?
Yes, you can absolutely do that. So let's go to the QA one. Let's run the QA again. And here we go. So yes, instead of having to click each one individually, you can just shift click on the type and then create a range. Sorry. There we go. And then just click on the first one, and then that will ignore all of those. If you're on a Mac, which I am, if you also press Command, then you can create a specific selection. Very similar to how we were showing comments, making parent and child comments. So here, if you select those, then those will be marked as well.
Cool, thank you. There are a couple of more QA-related questions. So let me go to those. Where can we get the LQA report? I missed that.
So the LQA report would be in the project area, but that is something that a project manager would be the one to send it over to the linguist. Sorry, let me go to the proper project. 1615. Here we go. So I can see here that it passed, but that's something for the project manager to send to the previous linguist.
Okay, thank you. Another one is, does a proofreader have to carry out the LQA?
You can, but that really depends on your organization's processes. So if there is a specific LQA step that a proofreader is assigned to, then yeah, they could carry out LQA. But if not, some projects or project templates might have that skipped. So it's up to your organization on how you want to run your projects.
Thank you. And one more LQA related one. Can you load other quality models and metrics for LQA?
Not as a linguist, but as a project manager, you can definitely define the settings for the LQA. So yeah, so that's a little bit more of a project manager question. So let me actually, yeah. So if you're seeing my screen now, I'll just take a quick detour for project manager. But basically, you can specify here in your language quality profile, basically, what should be checked for and what is the weight of each one. So for example, I established that a mistranslation should be worth 5 points because that is particularly important for me, but maybe I just want to establish it at 1 point, or maybe omissions are worth 10 points. So yeah, again, more of a project manager question, but yes, you can customize your quality models here.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, what should be the format of files to be translated or reviewed to upload? Could we import texts from websites?
Yeah, you can. So wow, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so you can definitely import text from websites depending on what the website is. So we offer out-of-the-box connectors for multiple websites, Contentful, HubSpot, GitHub, other websites. That's more of an admin and project manager question. You as a linguist wouldn't be able to set that up, but yeah, that is definitely possible. As far as format files, there's a lot of them. So let's just see here for the exact list. Supported file formats. Here we go. So pretty much the entire Microsoft suite, Google Docs, OpenOffice, HTML, IDMLs for InDesign, data files, docbooks, JSONs, zips, and even custom file types that you can define. So lots of those.
Yeah, there's a lot. Thank you. Next question. Could you please show once again how to open the working interface we have seen in the demo, starting from the project's list?
Sure. So basically, as soon as you log in, you'll come here, and then all you'd really have to do is just accept the job, and then just click on it. And that's it. That'll open it up. Or otherwise, you can go into the projects area, which will show you the list of projects, which you can also open it up as well from there. So open up the project there, and then click here on the jobs, and that'll open it.
Yeah. Thank you. Next question. What kind of subscription plan is the view we were shown? I cannot see it with the advanced plan.
Advanced plan. I think that refers to phrase strings, which is one of our other localization tools. So this is Phrase TMS. So that's why the view is a little bit different. But yeah, so that's another tool. That's why you're seeing here this sort of interface instead of the strings editor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next question. You mentioned being on a Mac. Could you point me to a list of shortcuts for Mac, please?
Yeah, so you can find them right here. When you click on these drop-down tools, you see all of the shortcuts here. So because I'm on a Mac, it detects that, and so it offers them here automatically.
Yeah, and just to add, I believe they're also searchable at the Help Center, the support article as a list.
Mm-hmm.
That's another option. Next question, how many profile types are there and how are their layout and permits different?
So there's quite a few. So the lowest one is linguist, and by lowest I mean least access, right? So the linguist would basically be limited to working here. So they are just the translators who would be, focused on localizing their content. Then there are project managers who handle the linguists and take care of assignment and sending out requests, managing, for example, translation memories and assets and things like that. They have the exact same access rights as linguists, but more, sorry, no, that's not correct. They can see the same thing that a linguist can see here in terms of the editor, but they can also edit a few more things in TMS, editing, for example, projects, project templates, creating, deleting assets, but that's situational. Some project managers might be granted more or less access rights depending on how your organization wants to run it. Then there are submitter roles, in which case it's basically for when you have stakeholders who know they need something translated, but they don't really concern themselves with the translation process. They don't need to worry about assigning them, to linguists or anything. So you can create a submitter role into which they can just load up their content, send it for translation, and they'll get an email when it's done. So in short, a submitter would basically send it to a project manager for them to assign. Then there is a guest, into which you can grant a lot of read-only visibility so they can see, manually check up on projects so they can see how it's going, but they really won't be able to change anything. And then finally, an administrator, which can change anything they want in Phrase TMS, whether it's server settings, templates, users, creating users, deleting users, anything they want to do, an admin can do.
Thank you. I think we can answer last two questions until we are out of time. So let's do that. Will the Arabic language be supported for the work interface?
I don't know of, let me see. Was that one of the languages that we saw there? I don't think it was.
Arabic, no.
Yeah, no, I don't think that one's enabled. So I don't know of plans to include Arabic in the language interface, but we can definitely bring that up to our product team to see if there is a demand to include Arabic, and then also add it here as well. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you. And the next and the last question I think we can cover today is there more risk of losing information when working with the desktop version of the software?
When you say losing information, yes and no. So if you mean in terms of reliability, not really. When you download the file, you will be able to work on it exactly as if you were on the web version, but you do lose out on a few things. So for example, the thing that I showed here, where you can search in the translation memory, The translation memory lives on the web version. So if you download your job and you're working offline, again, and this is you're working offline, not on the desktop version, you wouldn't be able to search the translation memory. But that's only if you have no internet.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think that's all we have time for today. But let me actually invite you to watch our 2 on-demand webinars that are already available on our website. So there have been a couple of questions related to the project manager perspective and also on phrase strings. So you can find 2 introductory webinars to cover these 2 kind of viewpoints of working with phrase, introduction to phrase TMS for project managers, and introduction to phrase strings. So if you're interested to have a look, you can go to our website. I will drop the link to the chat, and you can already find it on demand. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Giorgio, for the demo and for answering all the questions. And hopefully we will see you at another webinar very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.